Hey everybody, what's going on? My name's Avery Crawford. I wanted to talk to you guys about breeding ball python. We've been doing ball python breeding for about a year and a half. I'm not the most experienced individual, but I do take a lot of pride in learning as much as I can about a new hobby when I start. One of the important things is if you're going to breed ball pythons, you're going to have eggs eventually. And a lot of people, just like when you have a child, maybe a new puppy, there's a lot of responsibilities that go into that. So a few things to consider are substrates, temperatures, humidity, heat source, and all that good stuff. Obviously you're gonna need ball pythons to start, but we'll talk about that later. Once you get your eggs inside of the incubator, you wanna maintain temperatures roughly in the range between 85 to 90 degrees. Some people will say less is better. It's always easy to adjust a temperature that might be a little bit too low than one that's too hot. If it stays too hot for too long, it'll most likely kill your eggs. Same thing goes if it's too cold, although the threshold for being on the cooler side is a lot more bearable for the hatchlings inside the egg. You want a substrate that's going to provide good airflow for your eggs. That way it can hold on to humidity and moisture to keep them supple during the incubation period, but it's also not going to oversaturate the eggs. Something we like to use in the industry, two different substrates. There's perlite and vermiculite. Both of these you can get at usually like your local Home Depot, Lowe's, or you can just go online. Internet's usually got the cheapest prices. That's just the way the world works these days. In this case, I've got a bag of perlite. So you can see here, it's a potting mixture medium. You mix it in with your soil. This stuff's really interesting. It's very light. You can see there. This stuff, it holds on to water pretty well, and it also allows for really good ventilation on the eggs. We'll go ahead and take a look at some eggs that we have set up inside the room in just a minute. Another important tool to get yourself would probably be a temperature gun. This way you can accurately read the temperature of your eggs and the surrounding area along with your ball pythons and other objects in the room. Sometimes it can be difficult because it's not always accurate with a thermometer gauge. Temperatures fluctuate, but this is pretty cool because I can read out my phone right now with the battery running is 95.4 degrees. The walls sing at 83.5 ambient temperature. I keep my house on the warmer side, which is actually pretty good for the eggs. I know a lot of you people like to live in an ice box, nothing wrong with that. But for me, I'm comfortable when it's hot, and I know so are my eggs. So a temperature gun's gonna be good. You will be able to accurately measure the surface temperature of your eggs and the surrounding areas, so that way you can adjust your thermostat if necessary. Another thing we'll talk about in the future is candling. Candling is a good way to see if your eggs are healthy to begin with. A strong ball python egg will have veins, good color, good glow. If an egg is infertile or a dud, I don't have any duds to show you, or infertile eggs, but they won't possess any of those traits. No vein, really just kind of like yellow, like this milky yellow. So these are just some simple tools to consider when you're doing ball python breeding. And like I said, we'll touch more on these things later, but let's go take a look at the room and I'll show you guys my current clutch setup. All right, so here we are. This is the animal room. I've got my racks for breeding rats, playpen, our snake rack setups over here, but the important thing we're talking about today is the incubator. So this is a incubator brand by Hova. It's a single-use container. It's really only good for one, maybe two clutches at any given point in time. The only reason I say is because it's very small and the eggs sit centralized inside the container. Now there is a conduit that runs along the outside here. Things like this you have to be careful with because that heat source is so close to the eggs. It's very important to try and keep them protected. This is an ideal setup for us since our production is so low. One clutch at a time isn't a big deal. Once we get up to 3 or 4, we're going to change to a larger incubator. As I mentioned earlier, the candling technique is when you take your flashlight source, put it directly on the egg. As you can see there, we have healthy veins inside these animals. It's a good indicator that the process is going quite well. We keep our incubator stored at about 89 degrees. Now that temperature has a little bit of room to go up and down. I've clocked it at like 88.9, 89.2, but more or less it stays at 89 degrees. I feel it's a good temperature the ambient room temperature is like 83.5, and we have the air set in the rest of the house at 78. So it is rather warm in the home, but that helps me keep my temperatures in the incubator steady. The Incubator uses a wafer ring. It's not set on a manual thermostat. So for an example, over here, this is one of my thermostats for another set of snake cages. And right now it's in Celsius. So this monitors the temperature and keeps it electrically dialed in. So it's pretty accurate. The Incubator uses this wafer ring. You screw it up or down in accordance to how hot you want it to get. If you turn it to the left, you'll increase the temperature. You turn it to the right, you'll decrease the temperature, and then you lock it in place with this butterfly ring. Now, some people usually say set it and forget it with their eggs, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because every time you check on them, you are gonna have temperature fluctuations, but at the same time, the eggs need to breathe. You can't just have them locked up for 2 months while they incubate, otherwise they won't get any oxygen. So usually every couple of days, check on them. I pop the lid every night just to monitor my temperatures, make sure that before I go to bed or when I wake up in the morning, I know I'm not gonna be here for a majority of the day, that things won't get out of control. But you know, they are very fragile, and it's important to not mess with them too terribly much. Females do the same thing. They will actively monitor the heat of their eggs. They just know better than we do. That's their internal instinct as a mother. If they need to loosen their coils to cool the eggs or bind them more to increase the temperature. And it's also been said that if a female thinks that her eggs aren't moist enough, if the humidity's not well, she'll actually soak in her water bowl and then wrap herself around to raise that humidity level up, which is pretty cool. But for our sake of controlling the hatchlings, we're gonna put them in the incubator. I just feel better about it. It's 2 months, give or take, 55 to 60 days. They say if your eggs are a little bit cooler, it will take longer. If they're warmer, it'll be shorter. But roughly that 55 to 60 day window is good. So mark it on your calendars, the day they drop. You can expect them to hatch that week. Ours landed. All right, so Sunday, the 14th, Pastel dropped the eggs, 5 of them. According to the rule, September 2nd, which is a Monday, the eggs should hatch, and then the latest would be Saturday, which is the 7th. I've got question marks about egg cutting on the 5th and the 6th. Ball pythons are born with an egg tooth. When they come out of the shell, it's this tiny little grain of sand at the front, and they use it to cut through the egg. But they can also drown in the eggs, which is why in the world of ball python breeding, you'll see a lot of people cutting open their eggs. They would rather get their investment out 24 to 48 hours ahead of the hatch window to prevent them from drowning, rather than risk all that time and effort, money, food source that goes into them. And it is really sad to see those little noodles not make it out of the egg. So I didn't want to take all the credit, and we have to come back here and take a look at the mom. This is Sasha. She's just a regular Pastel, but as she's grown, she's still held on to a lot of her yellows, which is pretty cool. Some low quality Pastels brown out as they get older. As you can see here, she's hanging on top of her hide box. Now, she hasn't eaten since she dropped. I did wash her container out, which is something a lot of people usually ask me about. After a female lays a clutch of eggs, if you don't get the scent off of her and her tub, or even change her enclosure altogether, she'll still have the internal instinct to incubate, and she most likely won't eat, which can be difficult because, when you take a 1,700 gram snake and they drop a clutch of eggs that's 600 grams, you're going to be left with 1,100 gram snake, and they lose a lot of weight, and you want to get them building up for the next season. Okay, here she is, Sasha the superstar. I'm going to take her water bowl out, do a little cleaning on that later. Take a look at her. Sasha just laid 5 healthy pearly white eggs, and man, is she beautiful. It's okay, I don't care what they say about you. You'll always be a beautiful snake. Yeah. She's 3 years old. She hit the 1,700 gram mark at the peak of her ovulation, and that was my sign that the earliest you can usually pair snakes for the females is 3 years and 1,700 grams. Some people argue that in the wild they will reproduce whenever, but as far as controlling the breeding process, it's good to make sure that your females are healthy, they have good weight on them, so that way they can go full term with the eggs. So anyway, after a female goes and drops a clutch and you clean her off and you clean her enclosure, try to offer her a small meal every day. She may not take it initially. I know I've heard of females that'll take that stuff in a heartbeat. They won't even think twice, and others, they may take a couple days to a week or so to actively want any food. But you know, snakes can go a long time without feeding regardless. So don't be alarmed if your animal doesn't eat. Whether they're pregnant or not, whether there's a clutch of eggs on the way, you'll always have both male and female ball pythons going on a food strike, as we call it. And it's totally normal. I've gotten freaked out a couple times with some of our animals not eating, but they always come around full circle. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the nature of the beast, so to speak. But yeah, this is what the Pastel looks like. This is a great example of Pastel. Really healthy yellows along the body line, and even her dorsal stripe here along the back. You can see how as they get older, some of that high yellow contrast gets lost. I don't know. I think she's a great animal, and she just laid 5 healthy eggs for us. So I'm really excited to see what comes out of the eggs in about 2 months. Now everybody knows that you need 2 parts to make babies. This is our banana Enchi Pastel genetic stripe male. This was the stud that is responsible for that clutch of eggs over there. And man, is he wicked up close. There's the genetic stripe. You can see that very minor dorsal stripe peeking through. The Pastel with the banana has pretty much washed out all of his spots. He only has a few little freckles left on him. And the Enchi helps with that reduction pattern in the G stripe. Beautiful animal. Awesome. I love the banana gene. I'm totally friggin' obsessed. I wish we had more of them, but maybe we will in the future. So, as the genes compound in the eggs, you can get super pastel, you can get pastel, you can get Enchi, you can get genetic stripe, you can get banana genetic stripe. You really get any variation of all those combinations mixed together. And they're gonna be beautiful hatchlings. A lot of yellows. I'm looking for a lot of yellow in these snakes. Yeah, aren't they cool? So there you have it, in a nutshell. That was a little bit of an introduction on the snake breeding that we do. I'll do more stuff in the future. I'll probably touch base on every single one of our animals. I'll go more into how I breed rats and how I provide food for my animals. And of course, if you guys see me out and about, feel free to ask me questions. I always got my phone on me, my email's always available, Facebook, Instagram, everything. I'm everywhere, just hit me up and let me know.